All right. So, we're starting a brand new series today. As I've mentioned in my previous video, I will try and commit to this. I'm not sure how it will turn out, but I guess we can only know after we've tried. So, to speak on this new video series, if you have seen the title, you might be thinking, I'm gonna try and give you a new secret way to beat your backlog or something. But no, that's not the point. The point of this video is, I know that if you're watching this video, you're probably well into the gaming sphere, and you've probably watched like more than 10 or even 20, God bless you if you have, videos of how to beat your backlog, uh, or maybe just different ways to tackle it, right? Some people do it with spreadsheets, some people lower the barrier of entry by using something like the Pomodoro technique or something, just to, lower that initial friction you feel when you're trying to start or continue a game in your backlog. And I'm here today to offer you a different method, which might not be as glorious as you think, but I think is worth a try. So I'd like to view this as a little bit of an experiment, and what I'm trying to accomplish here is not to give you a method to clear your backlog, but to clear my backlog along with you. So if you're one of those people like me who enjoys playing a game with some background noise, whether that be your friends on Discord, or if it's just having a second monitor YouTube video or podcast playing in the background, then you might find it a little bit difficult to continue your games that might have been sitting in your backlog for a long time, just because of the fact that you might think to yourself, okay, so if I'm gonna play the games in my backlog, I'm gonna have to be immersed. So it's not like I can just put up a YouTube video in the background, because I won't be able to fully immerse myself in the game, right? So I'll do it later. I'll do it later once I feel like I'm ready to have a focused session. But therein lies the problem, because whenever you do that, you end up just sitting in the comfort zone of playing whatever multiplayer game that you've played for your entire life, or playing Minecraft and creating a new world for the 100th time, or whatever your comfort game is, which obviously removes yourself from actually making progress in the backlog. So this time, instead, I'd like to just literally use this as a tool for me myself to complete my backlog, or at least attempt to, by just playing the game and hopefully get you to play whatever you have on your backlog alongside me. Because I do understand that, when we're gaming, sometimes we just need a little bit of background noise, or sometimes we just, want to feel less lonely. And I know saying all of this might be a little bit hypocritical, because I'm saying things like, well, if you say that having a video up on the second monitor won't help, then why are you creating a video for a second monitor niche? Okay, so here's the idea. I want you to act as if I'm just your friend sitting in Discord voice, and you don't have to pay attention to the gameplay. You can lower my volume as low as possible, or maybe even to the point where you might not be able to hear or understand me that properly, but you can still hear a faint noise somewhere. And don't even worry about the gameplay, because, well, aside from spoilers for anyone who hasn't played the games that I'm going to be featuring in this series, you can basically just ignore the visuals But if you want to just leave this on as something while you do some other stuff like chores or whatever, then feel free. Of course, if you've played the games that I'm gonna be playing in this series, then feel free to just watch the visuals if you want. But if not, I want you to just load up your game, boot it up right now, and lower the volume of this video as low as possible, up to the point where you can at least still hear a little bit of background noise, but not enough that you're too distracted or you feel like you have to pay attention to what I'm saying. Because what I'm going to be saying in this series is basically just background commentary of the game, or maybe some various topics that I might be interested in commenting or talking about during gameplay, because sometimes you get into tangents. So yeah, that's the background of why I'm doing this series. And now I will introduce you to Final Fantasy VII Remake. So Final Fantasy VII Remake has been a video game that has actually sat in my backlog for not that long. Oh, by the way, Marlene is so cute, especially the Japanese VA. I can't. She's too precious. And oh yeah, I might actually mute the audio for this one, for this first video, and I'll maybe put some background music, because there were some complications in the video footage recording, and the audio ended up becoming a little bit messed up. Basically, it's like double audio, so I don't want to just butcher your ears and be annoying, so I'll just mute the audio for this first video. Anyway, back to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Oh, and by the way, if you hear any background noise from my side, creaking of the chair or whatever, that's because I'm recording this purely raw, unedited, because obviously I want to have a little bit of variety in terms of the content flavor compared to my usual weekly uploads on Sundays. If I make the schedule, usually I kind of stretch it a bit late sometimes, but for Sunday uploads I want it to be a little bit more structured, but not too much. Still, just enough that you'll be able to feel the authenticity coming out from what I'm saying, but just structured enough that it doesn't seem like it's too rambly, because that's where this series will have the freedom to do. So in this series, I'll probably be rambling a lot, not just about the game, but about other topics as well, because I'm recording this purely raw, no scripts, no nothing. So to get back to the game, Final Fantasy VII, as I said, have not really been in my backlog for that long. And it's funny, when I first picked up this game, I actually, of course, you buy most games on a whim, unless you're a Giga Chat who has finished every game in their backlog and have a specific goal of what game you want to play already in your mind. I'm not that. So when I picked up this game, I was actually in a state where I was actually struggling as well with my backlog. Shocker. And I just felt like I wanted to experience something new, just give myself permission to be able to play a new game. Because for the longest time, I have always restricted myself to my personal backlog only. And whenever I want to, experience something new, or whenever I get tired of my own backlog, I try and play my, I guess I like to call it forever games, where basically just, games that technically have no end, like MMORPGs, Minecraft, sandbox games, survival games, multiplayer games, what have you. So with those games, I usually use it as a refresher, a palate cleanser, if you will, from when I need a break from the backlog. So yeah. And during that phase, I sort of just jumped at the opportunity and gave myself permission to try a brand new game. And I will confess, I have played Final Fantasy VII, the original one, before, but I have not finished it. But I have passed the Midgar arc at least. I'm about like 30%. I want to say, yeah, around 30% through the game. And the Midgar arc in the original was fairly short. So yeah. And I just saw a notification pop up on my phone about Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate being on sale. So, of course, I had to just get the game. And I think it was one of my first times of actually purchasing a game, installing the game, and then launching it all in the same day. And I actually had a pretty fun night that night because I just had like a Final Fantasy VII Remake session late at night, midnight. It was like an hour or two, but it was like probably one of the best 1 or 2 hours I've had for a while during that time. So I started this playthrough a little while back. I now have around like 30 something hours in the game in total, I think. And I'm playing this game with a, I guess, completionist mindset because, well, before I wouldn't really worry about being a completionist, and I would just, focus on playing the game to have fun and at least just to roll credits, right? But when I installed this game, I knew that I would like it because I love the Final Fantasy franchise. I know I guess Final Fantasy franchise veterans would probably scoff at me for saying that I'm a fan just because I have only played Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 14, and Final Fantasy 16. I know, it's a very messy lineup of games that I picked, but it actually started all the way back from Final Fantasy 14. That was my first Final Fantasy, the MMO, because I liked MMOs and I thought, it might be an easier way for me to get into the franchise because everything else seemed a bit daunting. So, yeah, and once I played Final Fantasy 14, I was just completely hooked. It just consumed my life. That's not the whole truth because when I first started Final Fantasy 14, I actually didn't stick through the early game for that long. I kind of played. I think I got to the quest line where you had to board the airship and go to the other city states. I started in Ul'dah back then. You had to go to Gridania and Limsa Lominsa. And right as I reached that part of the game, I kind of just stopped. And I will excuse myself by just saying that back then when I first started Final Fantasy XIV, I was still a beginner in MMOs. I didn't have much experience in MMOs. Granted, I'm not necessarily a MMO expert right now, but at least I do have a lot more titles under my belt than I did back then. Now, after leaving the game, leaving Final Fantasy XIV, I sort of just felt like, okay, I get the idea of how the game is amazing. Of course, at that point, I was probably 20-25% through A Realm Reborn, which basically means I did not have an idea of how great that game was. But I thought I did because I didn't know the sheer scale and how long Final Fantasy XIV was going to be. So I stopped, and then after a couple years, I sort of watched more videos here and there, and I sort of thought to myself, you know what, I'll give it another try. And fast forward, I did give it another try, and this time I started in Gridania, and then I went all up to Stormblood, and I wouldn't say I played it in one whole sitting. I sort of fragmented my playthroughs. I started A Realm Reborn, and then like I switched off on and off whenever I would feel like I'm starting to burn out, and then I come back whenever I feel like it, and then continue again. And right now, my current progression is I saw the FanFest in Anaheim, I think, and how they were including Shadowbringers to the free trial. And when I saw that, I couldn't help but get back into the game and continue my playthrough. I think I left off at Stormblood, but I have not done the post Stormblood quests. So now I'm about halfway through the post Stormblood quests, but I'm taking a break because again I'm feeling a little bit fatigued by that game, because not only am I playing the main scenario quests, I'm also leveling up other jobs, I'm life skilling and whatever. So somewhere along the way, before I finished all the way up to Stormblood, like just in the middle, maybe around Heavensward or whatever, I played Final Fantasy 16. So Final Fantasy 16 was another game that I guess was important to me because of a lot of things. Not only because the game was, well, in my opinion, it was actually a good game, contrary to popular belief, because a lot of people seem to slander on that game. Now, I do understand about the shortcomings of the game from a game design perspective. There are lots of pros and cons, and admittedly, there probably are more cons than pros in that game. But the reason why that game was important to me was because it was actually attached to a specific friend who I used to, who I was close with in the past. And we sort of had I guess you could say, childish argument because of the game, and because of that, we were no longer close. And that game, I guess, sort of just accompanied me through that hardship, that phase of life. And yeah, I just love the game because, again, my prior experience before playing Final Fantasy 16 was only Final Fantasy 14. So I didn't have any idea about, what the quote unquote true Final Fantasy experience was from the perspective of narrative storytelling and world building and all of that. So the first, I guess, mainline Final Fantasy game that I did play was actually 16, aside from 14, because it's an MMO. And granted, 14 does have amazing storytelling, but you get what I mean when I say it's different. MMOs are different compared to just pure adventure or JRPGs. And when I played 16, I think I remember being so consumed by that game that I would find any excuse to play that game. I think it was back in during university when I was playing 16, so not too long ago. But I would literally be satisfied by just fitting like a small session of Final Fantasy 16 just to do like random tasks. It wasn't even like side quests in the game. It wasn't main scenario quests. I would just go out and, I don't know, search for chests, even though I always felt like doing those things in a game would feel like a chore. But I just loved the world of Valisthea so much that I didn't even mind doing that. I would go to like huge mob group zones and just farm for XP. And right now, the current progression with 16 is I have maxed out the base game, the level of my character in base game. I've collected every single item you can get in that game for a base game. And right now, I'm just trying to chip away at the ability points. I'm trying to accumulate all the ability points so that I can level every single ability to max, and then I can proceed to the New Game Plus with Final Fantasy difficulty being, maxed out in every single possible way. And also, I have done the 2 DLCs as well. That's how much I like the game. Because prior to that, I never really, there wasn't ever really any game that captured me so much that I wanted to get the DLC. It was more of like, okay, I'll play this game, see what it's all about. And then once credits roll, I'm like, yeah, okay, that was a contained experience, and I'm fine with leaving it as is. And the reason why the next game after that was Final Fantasy 1 was because I had this, like, I guess you can call it a bit toxic, but the feeling of like, okay, I've played the newest Final Fantasy, but I'm not a true Final Fantasy fan if I haven't played the classics, right? So I thought, okay, I'll just play Final Fantasy 1. And lo and behold, I didn't know what I was getting into. I was overwhelmed. I was lost. Okay, so first off, I can say that the older Final Fantasy, the difficulty was crazy. I think the difficulty curve was like, it was very difficult at the start, but over time you'd get a lot stronger, and the enemies would actually not go up with you in terms of strength proportionately, so you would actually have an easier time. So it was almost like an inverse difficulty curve. But yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while to finish that game. I had some grinding to do there before continuing the main quests. Or, I mean, back then you didn't even have quests. Basically, just before continuing to the next dungeon and whatnot. It almost felt like a dungeon crawler at some point, and I think that was just because of the I guess limitations that you had back then. But for its time, I think the narrative storytelling was amazing. The plot twist at the end was, yeah, I was surprised about Garland. And I think with Final Fantasy 1, playing it during that day and age just felt like you're entering this time capsule. And it just, the wonder of those 8-bit music, but at the same time you feel like it's familiar because you've heard the Final Fantasy theme elsewhere, because who hasn't, right? And even though the graphics were outdated, it was a bit refreshing even when you're able to have quite a bit of customization, and there was a lack of hand-holding compared to modern titles where you would be literally spoon-fed on what to do next, how to play the game, how to move your character, how to move your mouse, and like various obvious things that as a gamer you'd probably already know. So, moving on, with Final Fantasy VII, the original, I played it because, of course, after playing Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy 15, and then jumping all the way back to Final Fantasy 1, I felt like I had to at least give myself a chance to try one of the more, I guess, modern titles. Granted, Final Fantasy VII wasn't that new to begin with, but it's still, I guess, one of the more modern titles compared to the entire franchise. I know there are others like Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy IX, and whatnot, but that's besides the point. And when I first played Final Fantasy VII, I noticed that, of course, there were lots of quality of life updates compared to Final Fantasy 1. The obvious one being Final Fantasy 1 being a game that I guess sort of has a different sense of difficulty, in the sense that you can only save your game whenever you had a nearby inn, and you can't just save the game outright, which meant that if you forgot to go to an inn before going to a big dungeon and then you died, you'd have to go all the way back to whenever you last saved, which was crazy, but that was just how games were back then, I guess. And with Final Fantasy VII, I still found it a little bit difficult to navigate my way through the world because, again, of course, it was newer compared to Final Fantasy 1, but there wasn't necessarily that much hand-holding either. And I also played Final Fantasy 1 while having the game manual literally on a second monitor, so I would just know what I'm doing, right? Because with games back then, I guess if you didn't have the manual, you'd be doomed. I mean, you can still play the game, but it will be substantially more difficult. With Final Fantasy 7, however, I did play with the manual, but I just felt a bit, I guess, this is personally just for me. I felt like there was this friction of wanting to just play the game and see what I'll find out, just, playing based off of feel. And also the other side of, okay, I don't really want to miss anything, so I'll just have the manual up so I can literally explore every corner of this game. And at some point, it felt a little bit tedious and like, oh, okay, if I want to play Final Fantasy 7, I'm gonna have to be in a certain headspace of wanting to explore every nook and cranny, so I have to have everything set up perfectly before I can even play the game. And I guess I was, making the experience more complicated than it should have been for myself. But I figured, okay, I'm gonna just play the remake, experience Midgar again, and use that as a sort of refresher before I go back to Final Fantasy VII again. And I will put a disclaimer that the Final Fantasy VII game is not really that high on the backlog list, and it's a bit further down there, but I think I'll be able to remember quite a bit from the remake, even though I know that the remake does not, tell the exact story of Final Fantasy VII Midgar, the original, perfectly. And there are some of filler content and just things that they stretched out, but that's besides the point. I think it's fair to just use it as a recap tool, because even in the original game, it's not like I only played through Midgar. I played, I think I went to the Gold Saucer, and then I also went to several other areas after Midgar. And I remember the last playthrough of mine having, I think I went to that cave where you saw that snake and then enormous blade or something, which hinted at Sephiroth. And let me tell you, that scene, even though it had outdated graphics, it gave that sense of horror of Sephiroth being this huge villain, and it was amazing. It was really immersive, even though the graphics might not be up to par to today's standards. But I think there's a certain charm and amazement you can feel from those older games, and a certain level of joy, or I guess feeling that you just can't get from modern graphics and modern games. I might be wrong, because it's not like I've played every single modern title. There are other titles like Expedition 33, which I have not played, and I've heard a lot of good stuff about it. But yeah, so jumping to the present day with Final Fantasy VII Remake. With this game, I'm at chapter 13 or 14, if I'm not mistaken. So I just got past the section where you were trying to defend a pillar from Shinra and them trying to drop the plate, and that has already happened. We have rescued Wedge. Jesse and Biggs are still in a, I guess, ambiguous condition. And right now, I'm just trying to finish up a couple last side quests and loose ends before going to the, I guess, game's last climax of going to Shinra headquarters or something, if I remember correctly. And I'm currently just playing the side quests, and I will say that during some of the side quests, I guess hub sections of this game, I felt like it was a little bit draining, or just slow to try and get by, because you want to have this nice pacing. I get it. You want to have like some narrative set points and then some chill sections, but there were some sections in particular which felt a little bit too stretched out and repetitive. If I'm not mistaken, it was during the section where you had to go to the train graveyard or something. And it just felt like the game design was too repetitive. Like you would go and fight a group of monsters, and then you'd walk a couple steps, and then you'd find a chest, and then you'd go up to the second floor, and then you'd find another group of monsters, and just rinse and repeat. And at some point, it just felt really, really tiring. And I remember after going out of the train warehouse or whatever that was, I was like, okay, we're finally past this point. Only to be greeted by that horseman on a wheel thing as another big boss after the huge ghost boss. And I was like, I have to fight a boss again? Like, can I catch a break, please? But yeah, after finishing that boss, it was pretty much smooth sailing from there. So yeah, right now, oh yeah, I'm also gonna say as a disclaimer that although I did say that I'm recording this purely raw, no scripts, which is true, but I'm also recording it as a voiceover. I'm not recording it as I'm playing the game, just because I feel like if I'm recording it as I'm playing the game, I would probably not be able to be as vocal as if I'm recording it separately, because I'll probably be, too focused with the game, and the only thing you'll hear from me when I'm playing the game is probably like, oh no, or okay, oh, or wow, or just short little comments that probably won't be as entertaining. Not that this is any much like better, because I'm basically just rambling, but I think it will be a little bit more structured in a sense compared to just commenting on the game, because it's not like I'm streaming and I can interact with chat or whatever. So yeah, right now, let me just take a look at what's happening in game. So we're trying to find, okay, this is a side quest if I remember correctly, and I'm trying to help the woman from the orphanage to help her find the kids that were apparently missing. And then after wandering around the main city hub, I couldn't find them, and somehow when I went here, I found one little boy, and that boy led me to this fight that you're currently watching with the ghosts, the phantoms. And after finishing this fight, the other children will probably show up, I think, if I remember the details correctly. And yeah, weirdly enough, the ghosts actually, the phantoms actually felt kind of tanky for some reason. I don't know, they felt unnecessarily tanky. I mean, I guess there were only 2 of them, so that's fine. It's not like they're making me fight 10 of these phantoms, but they were weirdly tanky. So yeah, I had a bit of a tough time trying to clear this, but yeah, I think Tifa even died during this battle, and I had to use a Phoenix down. And yeah, I find the stagger a bit weird in this game. The stagger mechanic, well, okay, I won't say weird. I'm probably just not used to it, because I'm used to the Final Fantasy 16 dump every single one of your abilities that has a good stagger ability, a good stagger, I guess, amount. And then once the enemy is staggered, just dump more of your abilities till the enemy dies. And I guess this stagger method in Final Fantasy 7 is a little bit more nuanced, and it's not as obvious as Final Fantasy 16 as just pressing one button. So yeah, I do find it a little bit difficult to stagger the enemies from time to time. Anyway, yeah, we're done with this quest, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, afterwards I'm visiting the Chocobo guy and trying to help him find the lost Chocobos. And oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that I find the hub sections of this game a bit weird. Not weird, just like a little bit tedious. Because if I remember correctly, there were there were two hub sections aside from this one that I'm currently on. The other two hub sections, one being the start of the game. Okay, the one at the start of the game was fine because that was the first time you were introduced to that mechanic. But the second one, in Sector 5, if I'm not wrong, where Aerith lived, Sector 5, I think, yeah. Sector 5, you had to do like side quests and whatnot. It was somewhat okay. But the one in Wall Market, it just felt a bit tedious. Like, of course, okay, let me just rephrase this. For someone who plays for completionist, I guess it would be tedious, but for someone who would just focus on the main stuff, they would probably not be bothered by it. But for me, I'm, trying to like make sure I find every single nook and cranny and corner to not miss any chests. And with the Wall Market being the way it is in terms of structure, it was a little bit difficult to explore it because it felt like a maze for some reason. So, yeah. And right now I'm just trying to figure out which materia to slot to Barret. This is Barret. And the materia mechanic in this game is really interesting because, of course, I have not experienced anything like this before, seeing as it's my first time playing the more modern titles. The only materias I have seen before were in Final Fantasy XIV with the materias that you can slot to your weapons. But even then, I've never slotted any materia because you're already over leveled as it is with the experience in the Final Fantasy XIV free trial. It's basically just the materials in that game, well, at least for a free trial player, is basically just another like slot in your backpack that you gotta get rid of, which is a little bit of a hassle, but hey, it's a free trial, so I can't complain. So, yeah, and with Final Fantasy VII, the thing that I like to point out is, although it can be really immersive with the world, with the music and all that, I'm still trying to find this balance of like, okay, if I'm playing it as a completionist and I'm trying to look at every nook and cranny, it still ruins the immersion somewhat for me whenever I'm like, okay, right now I'm doing a main story quest, and let's say that it was the main story quest of us trying to rescue Tifa from Don Corneo in the Wall Market. Of course, that was something that had a sense of urgency and like, okay, you gotta go rescue Tifa now. But when I did that, I was like, okay, but at the same time, I want to explore like Wall Market properly. I don't want to like just push the main quest and then suddenly be notified that, okay, I'm no longer able to access that area, so I gotta move on. But I guess the game does tell you when you're at a point of no return, quote unquote. But sometimes it just breaks the immersion of like, okay, I want to like continue the main quest because it's urgent for like from a narrative sense, but I still want to explore, and it just feels a little bit tedious to skip all of the exploration, do the main quest first, and then only go back later. I don't know. It's a balancing act that I'm still trying to find out what to do with it. And of course, I'm also thinking about, okay, how did the developers actually intend for this to be played? Because, I think, at least for Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's quite a modern title. So the game design, from a game design perspective, it should be a lot cleaner compared to older games, right? But yeah, that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so right now we're trying to just go back to Sector 5, I think, and find out more of the side quests that I can do. And yeah, I find that the side quests in this game, at least, is a lot more entertaining compared to Final Fantasy 16 because it actually has somewhat of a narrative for the side quests compared to Final Fantasy 16, where the side quests, well, except for like a handful, are basically just typical MMO fetch quests. Like, okay, we need some medicine, please go fetch some herbs for us. And then you go to a farm to literally just pick up like 3 leaves, like 3, not 10, not 20, just 3. And then run all the way back, and then, okay, here's your leaves, hope you get better. And then you gotta deliver. Oh, I remember during the early game, you gotta deliver like you gotta serve food to the people. And of course, with the setting of Valisthea being very grim, you gotta help out. But it's like really, like, I'm playing as Clive and you're telling me to bring plates of food to tables? Like, come on, like, you can do better. Like, at least in this game, with the side quests, they're making you listen to stories of kids in orphanages and helping them out, and looking at kids doing kid stuff, like the base that they have in this area, the base in the back alley, looking at them playing around, and then suddenly one of their friends go missing, and then you gotta go fight and whatnot. At least it's a little bit more entertaining compared to the fetch quest MMO like quests that you have in Final Fantasy 16. But yeah, this is not a Final Fantasy 16 critique video at all. So let's move on. So I'm not like 100% sure about how I want to structure this series. I thought at first I'll just, record like what I have played, and then maybe just cut up the footage into, say, like 15 minutes or something, and then put a voiceover on it about just me talking about the series, the gameplay, and whatnot. But at some point of recording this, I realized that the gameplay itself just seems a bit too, like, it seems equally as important, even though, of course, sometimes I'll be doing things like in this video, just side quests and whatnot. But like Final Fantasy VII Remake in itself is just, in my opinion, such a good game that it would be a bit of a shame to just cut it out, just like cut certain parts of it. So I thought, at least just for this pilot video, I'll just lay the entire recording of the gameplay and put this voiceover on it and just talk about the game and my plans with this series. But it is not final yet. I will just see how I feel about this series after this first video, and whether or not I decide to continue and keep the trend of an hour of gameplay as approximately, while me just talking over it. Because of course I'm pretty sure at some point I'll probably run out of things to say. So the format isn't finalized yet. I might be considering doing a shorter version, or maybe if I'm doing a longer version, I can probably space out the uploads a little bit. So instead of every week, maybe it's every other week, because of course I do have other things that I have going on in my life. But at the same time, I feel like if I'm going to cut up the footage, not only am I cutting out certain parts of the game that I think is equally as important, even though, as I said, this video idea or this video series idea is just a way to have, I guess, a Kickstarter or a boost for you, the viewers, to be able to play alongside me and clear your backlog. But I think if I'm going to just record the entirety of the gameplay anytime or every time I'm going to play, it might come as a little bit of a friction point for me, myself, when I'm trying to play the game. Because, of course, I'm going to be thinking about, okay, so does this mean that whenever I will play the game, I will have to record it as well? And I fear that I might not be able to enjoy it as much, and I guess, have a negative attachment with my own gaming experience, which I do not want. So yeah, I guess we'll just see how it goes, and I'll adjust as this series progresses. So yeah, I think it's highly likely that I'll probably stick to a lower duration instead of like an hour. And I'll think about how best to cut up the footage in the future so that it won't be as demanding for people who want to have it on their second monitor. But at the same time, it's not as trivial to the point where anyone who actually plans on watching the video at least can have some sort of entertainment in terms of what happens in the game. And to be honest, before even thinking about uploading this video, I originally had a different video series concept in my mind, where I thought about perhaps just creating a very low effort sort of video idea of me just playing MMOs for like maybe 20 minutes or so, and laying over voiceover of me talking about the specific MMO or just the MMO genre in general, and labeling it something like, I don't know, MMO Midnights or something, just as another, I guess, background sort of video idea. But I thought about it, and I sort of thought to myself, well, I already have that style of video, which I usually upload on weekends. So won't it be a little bit too like repetitive if I basically just do the same type of video? And I wanted to try something new. So I thought, okay, I'll just try and entertain myself and at least give this video idea a shot. If it works, then I'll continue doing it. If I feel like it's not suitable to what I had in mind, then I won't continue it, or at least replace it with some other type of video idea. So yeah, none of this is finalized. I'm doing this by feel. If I feel good about it, I'll continue. If I don't, then I'll try and replace it with some other thing. But I still do want to get that upload frequency up so that I will also have some freedom in not just being locked into creating the weekly type of videos that I make, which is a little bit more video essay type of concept. And I want to be able to experiment, because that's what this YouTube channel is for me to try new things. And I want to experiment with new video ideas and types of ways of making content. And it might come down to having to like be a little bit more hands-on with the video editing, which is not really like, I'm not really a big fan of. But I guess that's just laziness speaking, and I have to just get a grip and just do it. Right. And oh yeah, I keep wondering what these dragon door looking thing are. I think I've seen like 3 or 4 other areas during my playthrough that had this sort of locked gate with the dragon sign on it. I've never really gotten any key to be able to open it. And I guess maybe later on in the game I'll be able to access that. But I also have to remember to go back to the wall market, because when we first got into the wall market, we were playing in nighttime. And during nighttime, there were a couple of areas where you basically won't be able to access them, and there was a notice saying that you'll be able to access it during the day. And I thought, okay, is that like a new game plus thing or something? But lo and behold, right now in the narrative, you're playing in daytime. So I guess I gotta remember to go back to wall market, explore those back alleys that I have basically noted down in my phone, in my notes app. And I'll have to go back there, because I did see a couple chests back there, and I gotta remember to go back and get it. So yeah. And I guess if we're talking about this game in itself, it does feel a little bit like, for me at least, for me, it still feels a little bit foreign with how the game is structured, because I I actually have not played a lot of JRPGs before. And oh yeah, that materia, I'm really curious about that. What materia is gonna do? The materia that calculates and records your steps. It says that the maximum amount of steps is 5,000, and I'm currently at about 2,000. I don't know what's gonna happen once I reach 5,000, but I guess we'll see. And with how this game is designed, I do see why people like it. And the combat in itself isn't inherently bad. I remember when I was facing that horseman looking guy with the wheels carriage thing, there was like one phase where he would just circle around the battlefield, and it was really difficult to hit him, because in this game, you actually, I just found out, like, during my playthrough, that you have to actually be wary or mindful of your position, of your character's position, because if you use an ability that is, say, close range and your opponent is not within range, you will actually miss and waste your ability. And oh yeah, you gotta run away from this thing before it self-destructs. When I was partying up with Aerith, we got hit a couple times by that. And anyway, to get back to it, with how the game is structured, I do feel like the combat is okay, but it does feel repetitive to a certain degree. And when I was facing that, okay, I gotta actually find out what his name is. I keep calling him the horse wheel carriage guy, but yeah, that guy. So there was one point when he was just circling around, and it was really difficult to reach him. I actually found it really satisfying that during one of my ability usage, if you see during this gameplay, when you use an ability, you'll be notified at what targets are available for to be able to, that you can attack. And when I was facing that boss, there wasn't any other target aside from the boss itself. But at one point during that phase, I saw that there were like extra targets, being the wheels, that suddenly popped up when I was using the ability menu. And so I took notice of that, and I thought, okay, interesting. Let me see what I can do about this. And I think I used Cloud, or when I was using T5, yeah, I'm pretty sure I was using Cloud. And I used the focused thrust ability specifically with intention, because I thought, okay, the focused thrust ability will be able to cover a lot more ground. So instead of chasing the carriage, I sort of positioned myself in a way that I would be able to intercept the path of the carriage. And when I did it, it just felt super satisfying. It's like one of those moments when the combat just clicks, and then you do something that you think might work, and it actually works. So yeah, I think the combat in this game is pretty okay. It's just that I'm not like super used to, well, I guess this is active turn-based, but it still does feel turn-based to a certain degree, because of course you get pauses and whatnot. And yeah, I'm not as used to turn-based yet. I haven't played that many turn-based games. It's basically only Final Fantasy 1 and nothing else, because if you've watched any of my previous videos, the bulk of my gaming experience has always been competitive shooters. Well, at least back then, I don't play competitive shooters that much anymore, but it was mostly just competitive games. So, games like CSGO, Valorant, PUBG, Apex Legends, Fortnite, and Rocket League, and R6, and all of those types of games. So back then, I would never really branch out to different genres of games, which I sort of do regret to a certain degree, because once I did try different genres, I figured out that there was this like big world that I was discounting myself from, which was a shame. But at least hey, we're already in it now, at least. So when I eventually got myself to try different genres of games, I started off playing the the classics, the games that you quote unquote won't can't miss, right? You see all those lists mentioning various games that you have to play, the must plays. So I did. I tried. I think I saw like Witcher 2 and 3 in a bundle. Sorry, Witcher 1, 2, and 3 in a bundle. So I went ahead and purchased it. And believe it or not, the only game that I finished is Witcher 1. Witcher 2 and 3 is actually next in the list. Oh, wait, no. After this, I'm playing Space Marine 2 or Warhammer 40k on the PS5. And I'm not sure how I'm gonna record that because I've never recorded any footage on the PS5 before. But then, yeah, after Space Marine 2, then I'll do Witcher 2 and 3. And if I'm not mistaken, after Witcher 3, I'll have Elden Ring and then Final Fantasy 7 Original at the bottom of the list. If I'm not mistaken, I'll have to look back at the list again. But yeah, my backlog is surprisingly tiny compared to other people because because I've actually cleared most of them, and I guess removed any other games that I didn't feel like playing without guilt. At first, back then I did feel some sort of guilt, like, oh no, am I admitting defeat by removing this game from the list? But at some point I just felt it just felt so dreadful, and I thought, okay, let me just be real with myself. When I look at this list, what are the games that I just feel like I'm probably not gonna like it, or probably not gonna get back into it for the ones that I have tried before. So yeah, I did that, and now my list is just very small and simple, which I do like, and I'm not complaining. And also yesterday I did, funnily enough, try out OSRS, Old School RuneScape, for the first time. So I do like MMOs a lot, if you can't already tell from what I've been talking about. But I never really got into RuneScape. I always saw that RuneScape was always amongst one of the, I guess, top 5 or top 10 games, or top 5 or top 10 MMOs that you should play in 2020, whatever, right? 2021, 2022, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or basically just in every single one of the lists, you'd always see titles like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, Guild Wars 2, OSRS, and maybe Elder Scrolls Online. And I always wanted to get into RuneScape, and I didn't know like what the big deal was about RuneScape. So at first I tried RuneScape 3, and I guess back then when I tried RuneScape 3, I had this sort of complex of like, oh, why would you play old games? Like, you just play the modern ones. Like, it's how the developer intended you to play. People who play old school stuff are just, trying to be a contrarian. Like, oh, the modern ones are no good. Just play the old ones. They're much better. It's just nostalgia, blah, blah, blah. But when I did try the old school RuneScape, I finally understood what the hype was about. At first, of course, I entered the game with not knowing how the experience would be, because the only MMOs that I've tried before were New World, Lost Ark, Throne and Liberty, Final Fantasy 14, and several others that I've tried dabbling in. Like, I haven't gone that far in to the game yet. Oh, Guild Wars 2 as well. So, like, I've always been so used to modern MMOs being the type of experience where you would only be able to experience the full game once you've reached point X or point Y, whether that be a level goal or whatever. And it's funny because when I was playing old school RuneScape, like 2 hours passed me by, and I was like, okay, when does the game start? Only to realize that I have been playing the game the whole time. Like, the experience actually got good from the very start, which I wasn't used to because I was always playing, the modern titles. So I guess it was sort of like a gotcha moment to myself. I was like, wait, I'm actually enjoying this because 2 hours have passed and I didn't even realize it. So that, like, this is actually the game, and I'm already playing it and enjoying it. I really did enjoy it. Like, the life skilling just it was so deceptively simple that I thought, okay, how are people even gonna like this? Of course, back then when I saw the game at first, I was like, okay, old graphics, blah blah blah. But of course, once I've played other games with older graphics, I sort of tried to remove that initial judgment from these titles that have outdated graphics. So I gave it a try, and boy was I hooked. I couldn't tell you the feeling. Well, at least for people who have played OSRS, they probably know. They were probably sitting here like, well, there you go. It's more of like an I told you so. But for people who haven't tried old school RuneScape, just give it a go, or maybe don't, because it's probably going to be super addicting. So depending on where you are in life, you might or might not have the time to entertain another 1,000-hour adventure of RuneScape, even though I've only played like a minuscule amount, and I probably have not much to say in terms of like what I know of the game. But even 2 hours, 3 hours in, I can already tell that it's something that has to be handled very carefully. If I'm not cautious with how I separate my time with old school RuneScape, I think that game would easily consume my life. So yeah, gotta be wary of that. So yeah, as we're approaching the end of this video, again, I would like to thank you if you have reached all the way to the end. I can already tell that I'm probably gonna opt for a shorter duration for these videos, because somewhere along the way I just started rambling and repeating my words, and I didn't know what to say or what stories to tell. And this is only the first video, so at least I would probably have a little bit more to say compared to later videos once the other videos are out. But yeah, I think that should be it for this session. I'll see you next time, and I'll try and keep the videos at least on a weekly upload basis for this series at least. And yeah, the typical Sunday 10-minute videos are not going anywhere. They're still gonna happen. I'm doing that as it's sort of like my anchor. Like, I have to do that one at least, and I can experiment with other video ideas on top of that. But that is like the must do. Like, I can't skip that. So yeah, for this video series, I'm probably gonna taper it down to maybe about, I want to say like 15 minutes possibly. But the only friction for me is trying to find out which parts of the video I'm supposed to include in the 15-minute video. Because of course, if I'm recording the footage of whenever I'm playing the game, say I'm recording for every 1 hour bulk and then cutting that 1 hour video footage into 15 minutes, I'm gonna have to be more intentional of what I include in those 15 minutes. Not only do I have to add, I think it's not that I have to, but I think at first I thought at the very least, if I'm not going to cut up anything, it's going to feel like, the viewers, all of you guys, would be experiencing something a little bit more real and genuine of like, okay, this person is actually experiencing and clearing their backlog together with me, instead of something that is too fabricated or cut up and edited in a specific way that might seem a little bit like, okay, we're not really playing along with you, we're just watching your clips. So I want to avoid that at all costs. So yeah, that's it for the video for today. I apologize if I repeated lots of words and if I started rambling at some point, because I know I did. And I hope to see you in the next video. And after this, I'll probably upload the weekly ones first, the Sunday video, and then we'll see. I'll see like next week what I want to do with this series. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you a lot. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. Bye bye.